નમસ્કાર, આપની સાથે હું છું પાયલ અને સ્ક્રીન પર તમને ઉત્પલ વોરા દેખાતા હશે. ડિફેન્સની ઘણી બધી વાતો કરવી છે એમની પાસેથી. જે ઓપરેશન સિંદૂર છે એ વિશે વાત કરવી છે અને સમજવું છે આખા ઓપરેશન વિશે. પહેલા તો જય હિન્દ સર. અને જે રીતના મોડી રાત્રે પાકિસ્તાનમાં ઘૂસી અને ઓપરેશન સિંદૂર કરવામાં આવ્યું, સૌથી પહેલા તમારી પ્રતિક્રિયા જોઈએ છે વિષય પર.
સૌથી પહેલા પાયલ જય હિન્દ અને proud to be on your channel on this particular moment કે જ્યારે ભારતે પોતાનો રિઝોલ્વ દેખાડ્યો છે ટેરરિઝમને ફાઇટ કરવા માટે. સો લેટ મી સ્ટાર્ટ વિથ સેઇંગ દેટ કે જે રીતે પાકિસ્તાને છેલ્લા 60 વર્ષથી પ્રોક્સી વોર ઇન્ડિયા સામે કરી રહ્યું છે અને ટાઈમ ટુ ટાઈમ હંમેશા ઇન્ડિયા એઝ એ કન્ટ્રી અને ઇન્ડિયન આર્મ ફોર્સિસ એઝ એ એજન્સી ઓફ ધી ઇન્ડિયન સ્ટેટ જે રીતે રિસ્પોન્સ આપી રહ્યું હતું, તેમ છતાં પાકિસ્તાન વોઝ કન્ટિન્યુઇંગ વિથ ધીઝ નેફેરિયસ એક્ટિવિટીઝ. હવે નાવ there came a particular time where we had to raise the bar and therefore આપણે એને સર્જિકલ સ્ટ્રાઇક કરી કે બાલાકોટ સ્ટ્રાઇક કરી અને બાલાકોટ સ્ટ્રાઇક કર્યા પછી ઓલ્સો પણ પાકિસ્તાન વાઝ ના આવ્યું. પાકિસ્તાન ઓલ્સો રિટેલિએટેડ with 22 aircrafts they brought in and full-fledged dog fight, counter air operation ને બધું થયું. અને એ પછી પણ જ્યારે they were under the impression that probably under the blanket or under the nuclear domain probably they could get away with everything with a massive country like India. અને માટે જે હિનિયસ ક્રાઇમ થયો, જે બ્લડશેડ થયો પહેલગામની અંદર, અને એમાં જે પાકિસ્તાનની ફૂટપ્રિન્ટ જોવામાં આવી એઝ પર આપણે જે રિપોર્ટ્સ બહાર આવ્યા છે, it was very clear that a country like India and any self-respecting nation will not take it lying down. And therefore, certain amount of punishment had to be given to Pakistan. Certain amount of retaliation, certain amount of retribution was necessary. કારણ કે કોઈ પણ democratic country and elected government of the day of a democratic country cannot afford to have this kind of situation going on, and this kind of cacophony cannot be allowed to continue without any consequences or without any ramification. માટે punishment આપવું એ નક્કી હતું. ક્યારે આપવું, કેવી રીતે આપવું અને કેટલી હદ સુધી આપવું, that was only to be decided. And that I am sure that in the CCS meetings with the Prime Minister's meeting with three services chief, NSA and the Defence Minister and CDS, the broad or larger the modalities would have been worked out, and they would have been given a clear-cut order as to go ahead and whatever you feel feasible, please execute on the ground. So now India has shown its resolve and a punishment has been given to Pakistan. So Pakistan should have, Pakistan also, and through intelligence reports, after all, it's a sovereign state. And therefore, any intelligence agencies and all, they are bound to operate and gather information and intelligence. But they were aware that this time it is going to be a different connotation altogether, and it is not going to be the same as usual. Therefore, Pakistan was, also positioning itself on the line of control, preparing, its preparedness. And in case if something happens, then how probably Pakistan should react and all that. By and large, we were getting the feel of it through the media. So this is how the broad situation is. Now we have shown the resolve as a nation that, look, you cannot get away. Every time you do something wrong or your footprints are visible or shown or seen, then you will face consequences. And therefore, we have reacted. And that is my initial reaction on this situation. But Payal, just give me 1 minute. You see, by doing so, what is most important is the reaction, official reaction, or a government reaction, which has come through the PIB, Press Information Bureau, and એનું જે સ્ટેટમેન્ટ આવ્યું છે, અને thereafter Indian Army નું જે official statement આવ્યું છે, that is the most important, part in this whole affair. Because what action has been taken is taken. That is over. Now that is behind us. But and we can discuss endlessly on and on કે શું કર્યું ને કેવી રીતે કર્યું. Fact of the matter is that we have shown as a nation, we have shown our resolve to strike at the terrorism. But what the statement it says is a very responsible statement, and it says at this moment of time India has only struck on the terrorist organizations operating from 9 terrorist places. જેને ગુજરાતીમાં શબ્દ વાપરીએ તો જેને અડ્ડાઓ કહેવામાં આવે અને જે મીડિયા બહુ યુઝ કરી રહ્યું છે. માટે terrorist installations have been blown off by firing a coordinated missile strike from the other side of the LOC. So 9 installations of terrorist organizations have been attacked. And both army, Indian army and the Press Information Bureau government statement has given a very calibrated and a measured, you understand this word, calibrated, measured and responsible response, that we have not attacked the military installation or Pakistani military or civilian installations. And therefore our intention was not to carry out a strike against the Pakistani civilians. And we have only gone to the extent of attacking the Pakistani terrorist organization or apparatus, which is operating from Pakistani soil. So please don't lose sight of this official statement. It's a very, very responsible statement from a major power or a regional power like India, which is also a nuclear power and a much, much bigger power in all possible terms, like diplomatic power, military power, economic power, political power, geopolitical power. There is no comparison between us and Pakistan. And therefore we had to react in a very measured manner.
અને સર મારો બીજો સવાલ પણ એ જ હતો કે આપણે યુદ્ધની વાત ક્યારે કરી જ નથી. સતત એ તરફથી આવતી યુદ્ધની વાત અને હજુ પણ આ બધું થયા પછી પણ ત્યાંના નેતાઓ, પ્રધાનમંત્રી એવું જ કહે છે કે અમે લડીશું, અમારી સાથે જે થયું છે એના માટે.
So Payal, but મારો counter question એ છે કે what else do you expect from an adversary or enemy country? Do you want Shah Nawaz Sharif to go on TV and say that we have surrendered to India? I mean, that will be a political suicide for him. That will be a political harakiri. And as you know, that in Pakistan power apparatus, Pakistan politicians, they have, not much of significance. I will not say at all, but I mean, they don't have much of significance. What matters is Pakistan military, which is a state within state. And therefore, in front of Pakistan military, Pakistani military leaders, those who operate from the GHQ headquarters from Rawalpindi, do you think any Pakistan leader will have courage not to say these words? કે અમે લડી લઈશું, અમે છેલ્લા શ્વાસ સુધી લડીશું, અમે એને befitting response આપીશું. It is, these are all, these are bound to be this, such reaction from political leadership of an enemy country or adversary country.
સર, જે રીતના આખું ઓપરેશન થયું એટલે એમાં ત્રણેય અલગ અલગ પાર્ટ હતા, ત્રણેય સેનાના ભાગ હતા અને ત્રણેય ભેગા મળી અને આખું ઓપરેશન કર્યું છે. નામ પણ બહુ સિગ્નિફિકન્ટ આપવામાં આવ્યું છે કે ઓપરેશન સિંદૂર, જે પહેલગામની ઘટના પછી જે પણ મહિલાઓને આપણે રડતા જોઈ છે, જે પણ મહિલાઓનો આક્રંદ સાંભળ્યો છે, એના ઉપરથી નામ એવું આપવામાં આવ્યું છે કે જે આપણી અસ્મિતા સાથે અને આપણા વાત સાથે, સંસ્કૃતિ સાથે જોડાયેલું છે. તો એ બધી જ વસ્તુઓ ભેગી કરીએ તો એ આખું ઓપરેશન જે રીતના થયું છે, તમે ડિફેન્સમાં ઘણું બધું કામ કર્યું છે, તો એ ઓપરેશનમાં ત્રણેય જ્યારે ભેગા થયા છે એના પછી પણ સતત એલઓસીમાં અત્યારે જે થઈ રહ્યું છે, સ્થિતિ તો ખૂબ ગંભીર છે. અત્યારે ત્યાંથી જે રીતના કરવામાં આવી રહ્યું છે, પાકિસ્તાન તરફથી એલઓસી ક્રોસ કરી અને જે રીતના 3 લોકોના મૃત્યુ થયા છે, આગળ શું લાગે છે કે કઈ પ્રકારની સ્ટ્રેટેજીસ હશે?
See, Payal, make no mistake. Like Israel, we are not fighting Hamas or Hezbollah or Houthi, which is a terrorist organization. Please understand this fact, and આ બહુ સમજવાની બહુ જરૂર છે. Israel was never fighting a sovereign state. Israel was never fighting a fully professional army, navy and air force of any sovereign state. કારણ કે જે કંઈ પેલેસ્ટાઇન ઓર્ગેનાઇઝેશનની સામે ફાઇટ કરી રહ્યા હતા, that was only a terrorist organization supported by a country like Iran, અને આ ઈરાનના બધા proxies હતા. Now, what makes this particular India-Pakistan scenario unique is that here there is a state-sponsored mechanism supporting the terrorist organization operating from its soil. Each word has got a meaning in that. And if you have to fight a terrorist organization willy-nilly, you have to fight a sovereign state. And that sovereign state happens to be Pakistan. And that Pakistan state is fully supported by a major global power like China. And also to a large extent, at this moment by Turkey, Iran, not in terms of resources, but in terms of moral support. And a few Central Asian, countries like Kazakhstan, and so and so forth. But out of that, the most significant power is China. Because China today, whether one likes it or not, it is world's #2 global power in terms of economic, military, and diplomatic power. So you cannot neglect China. Secondly, China has already activated the entire 3,486 kilometers of the LAC, line of actual control. And we have certain past with China in near past. Therefore, what was the objective behind activating the LAC? That remains another matter of discussion on some other day. But the issue is that the Chinese statement, in the last, about 4 to 5 days, consecutively coming out independently, and Chinese envoy, whilst meeting the Pakistani Prime Minister and Pakistani President Mr. Zardari, you cannot lose sight of. Because the issue is not that here dhol nagara nathi vagadwana. You have to do a balanced analysis of a given set of situation, given set of circumstances, and therefore you cannot disregard the fact that China and Pakistan have a close nexus, and Pakistan happens to be the client state of China. When Pakistan's economy is in turmoil, Pakistan is fighting a three-front war on Afghan, Pakistan Durand line and the border, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and also, with, India on the LOC, and all throughout in the northern sector as well as northwestern sector and western sector. So therefore, one cannot lose sight of the fact. The second fact is that they both are, fully nuclear armed neighbors. And therefore, the responsibility on the either side goes many fold. Now, I've always said that, and I have no hesitation in saying that the most easiest thing in the world is to start the war. That firing of one missile is of no consequence. Any general can do it. Where, the competence of a general and a competent armed forces or professional armed forces comes is how do you regulate the war? How do you control the war? How do you escalate the war to meet your requirement, to ensure that your war objectives and your end, game or, end objective is achieved without the escalation going in the favor of the enemy? The advantage should always remain in my pocket. If I am a competent, general, admiral, or air marshal, it should, which is in other words, in military parlance, it is called center of gravity. The center of gravity cannot be allowed to shift in any war whilst you climb the escalatory ladder or you resort, the escalatory ladder mechanism to go on the side of the enemy. That is where the beauty lies. Therefore, what happens, and most of the time people do not have an idea on this, that if you take particularly the Pakistan and India scenario, we are qualitatively and quantitatively, we are far superior to Pakistan in conventional might. Underline this word, in conventional might and conventional capability. But this conventional capability and conventional might at times get blurred when the nuclear factor is thrown into it. Now, many people have been saying that Pakistan raises a nuclear bogey. Now you can, now this is where the matter comes. The maturity of, political leadership and political, environment. Either both of these people who are, putting their hand back and saying is nuclear bogey and don't take cognizance of it. But should something go wrong and should a situation get enacted whereby on a escalatory ladder, the situation goes out of control and a messy situation is created, then at that point of time, if I am the political leader, the buck stops on my shoulder. I cannot say કે આને મને કહ્યું હતું કે આ તો ન્યુક્લિયર બોગી છે અને માનશો નહીં અને માટે હું આગળ વધ્યો. That is not, I mean, the kind of situation that political leadership can get away with it in a democratic country. Because ultimately, the buck stops at a political leadership. And therefore, to go to war or not to go to war in a democratic nation, Navy and Air Force, they do not decide. It is decided by the political leadership. That is Union Cabinet, CCS, and in consultation with the three services chief. So, I mean, these are the kind of situation. તમે કહો છો હવે શું થશે? The whole situation is that now you have to see that the ball stops, in the court of Pakistan. Why it is so? Because they created a havoc, they created a heinous crime, they created a dastardly act, અને જે રીતે cold blooded murder ને બધું કર્યું, એ પછી there was no doubt that they have to be punished. We punished them. We showed our resolve. Now, if Pakistan, knowing fully well that in conventional might we are far inferior to India, and if they still decide to retaliate and go adventurous and and make a miscalculated adventure and retaliates and crosses the LOC or carries out some kind of creates a situation which is not to their favor, they will have an egg on their face very badly. They will mess up the situation, and they will the India will also retaliate, and it will be a massive retaliation. There is no doubt on that. Now even if you see the statements coming out of the Marco Rubio, NSA of the United States of America, he is very statement તમે સાંભળો અને સમજો. He is very cleverly worded that sentence, and he has said now both sides had their say on either side. Now everything should settle down and things should de-escalate. Now the word is de-escalate. Therefore, India has also said very responsibly that અમે ખાલી terrorist organization ને destroy કર્યું છે. Now, we are a responsible nation. Amare at this stage, and the underlining word is અત્યારે. At this stage, we have no intention to escalate. But jo tame now, if you go beyond your line and if you escalate the matter, you will face dire consequences, and we will also be retaliating. So what I am trying to say is that now, rather than world saying to India કે de-escalate, તમે restraint રાખો, તમે આનાથી વધારે ના કરો, the more responsibility lies on the shoulder of Pakistan. That Pakistan, if it's a sensible nation, he should not retaliate. He should absorb. અને ego ને વચ્ચે લાવવાની, military ego or political ego ને વચ્ચે લાવવા દેવો ના જોઈએ. But this is an idealistic scenario. Will that happen in a political scenario? પાકિસ્તાનની અંદર જે રીતે મિલિટરીની ઇમેજ છે, જે રીતે એનો ઈગો છે, કાલ ઉઠીને પાકિસ્તાનનો મિલિટરી ઓફિસર કે મિલિટરી લીડર, he will not be able to face the local politician and local people. There will be uproar in Pakistan. India મારી આવ્યા, તમે તો શું કરી ના શક્યા, તમારો તો કોઈ યુઝ નથી, and all kinds of the bombardment will start taking place in the political the environment of Pakistan. Now to come out of it, it will also be a political necessity on the part of Pakistan to do something. Now see the contradiction. From one side, the political ego should not be allowed to come in the way, but the other side, political ego is equally necessary for the survival of the Pakistan military. Now, how do you do a balancing act between the two? That is the only question that we'll have to wait and watch. Because now what I'm saying is the most important thing. The next few hours and next few days are very, very important for this developing story as to how Pakistan reacts. If Pakistan reacts, there is a problem. If Pakistan does not react, there is a problem.
problem.
Now they have to choose, and that is where their caliber and the quality of leadership will come into the play.
ઓકે, થેન્ક યુ સો મચ સર, તમે અમારી સાથે જોડાયા બદલ.